tonight we are very, very excited and proud to host Ada Trillo. She is a Philadelphia-based photographer, native to the Juarez, El Paso binational metroplex. I love that. Thank you for that. That's great. Ada focuses on borders of inclusion and exclusion as they are experienced through people in forced prostitution, climate and violence-related international migration, and U.S. exclusions resulting from long-standing borders of race and class. Trillo's goal is to bring attention to the impact that these borders have on exploited and marginalized people and amplify their voices. She utilizes photography as a platform to document our times by capturing both our most joyous and most painful moments. This art has the power to lay bare our common humanity and dignity. She is the recipient of a Leeway Foundation Art and Change grant, the Center for Emerging Visual Artists Fellowship, and a Fleischer Art Memorial Visual Artist in Residence. She has also been awarded first place in editorial photos with the Tokyo International Photo Awards, the Me and Eve grant with the Center of Photographic Arts in Santa Fe, and first prize in Focus Photo LA. Trillo has exhibited internationally in Luxembourg, England, and Italy, and her work is included in the permanent collection of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. She holds degrees from the Istituto Marangoni in Milan and Drexel University in Philadelphia. Thank you very much, Ada, for coming tonight and sharing your work with us. I'm really excited that you're here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, I wanted to just say that there'll be, as she moves forward, feel free to add questions into the chat and we'll get to them either in the middle of her presentation. I'll ask to stop in case there needs to be a clarification of some of the images, and then there'll be time afterwards for more questions. Okay, I've made you able to share, Ada.
Hi, thank you for joining me today. English is not my first language, so if I'm talking too fast or you don't understand something I say, raise your hand or send me something and give me a cue that I can re-say what I just said, okay? Because, and especially when I'm nervous, and right now I'm nervous, I tend to speak a little bit faster. So here's my website and here's my Instagram. And today we're gonna talk about La Caravana del Diablo, which left Honduras this January 2020. But before that, I wanted to give you a little bit of a background. I've been covering immigration for the past 4 years. And I wanted to give you a little bit of an insight of why is it that caravans formed? Because when I started covering La Bestia. There hadn't been caravans yet. And for those of you that don't know what La Bestia is a set of freight trains that traverse Mexico from the southern Guatemala border all the way to the US-Mexican border. So if you're a migrant and you have no money to pay for a coyote is somebody, a smuggler, then the way you do it is you get on top of La Bestia. But La Bestia has many problems. One of them is that you have to catch it when it's moving because since it's not for passengers, the guards are very vigilant that there's that people don't go on top of it, or they try to be. So you have to try to fool the system. Then, and by trying to do that and getting into a moving train, you can lose a leg or your life. And you also have the biggest problem is organized crime towards the migrants. And this is what happened here to Miguel. They do ransom kidnappings to migrants for a small amount of money to the families. So what they have to do is the migrant gives the phone number of the family member, and the family member will try to gather between $2,000 or so, give or take. And then it's done Western Union, and then the migrant is left free. Miguel didn't want to put his family in this hardship, so the cartel, to show a lesson, cut his hands and gave him a beating, to not only a lesson to him, but to the other migrants. And these things like this happen all the time. So that's why caravans form, because together it becomes a community. You become almost a family when you're traveling together. If you don't have a lot of money, somebody will make sure that you have something in your food to eat or something to drink. It's a community that will help each other. The problem with the caravans also is that you're highly visible to the governments. So let's say you want to cross from Guatemala to Mexico, and the Mexican government doesn't want you there, which was what happened with this caravan. Traditionally, Mexico has allowed for safe passage of migrants for decades. Peña Nieto, you name the president, they have allowed for safe passage. However, with Lopes Obrador, they made an agreement with Trump. And that agreement is basically either you control the migrants, or we're gonna start bringing increases in the tariffs of Mexican goods coming to the United States. Which one is it gonna be? So this time that the caravan came, unlike the one in 2018 where they were allowed safe passage into Mexico, this caravan was not allowed in. And we're gonna see what happened. Eric, I put this picture because I met him in 2018. I traveled the previous caravan, and I traveled from Tapachula to Tijuana. That's almost the length of Mexico, close to 2,000 miles. And Eric was kind enough, after he had been denied asylum in the United States, to allow me to host me in his home in San Pedro Sula, Honduras, so I could join the caravan that left this January. This caravan, unlike the one that left in 2018, was highly disorganized. So it divided into two groups. The one in 2018 were all together. And this one, they went into two different points of the border between Guatemala and Mexico. One group went to El Ceibo, one went to Tecunuman. Still border Guatemala and Mexico, but two different points in the map. And here you see the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, when we departed from the central station in San Pedro Sula, Honduras. San Pedro Sula, Honduras is one of the most violent places in the world because of gangs. So there's a lot of people leaving the country, leaving Honduras because of gang violence. But we're gonna discuss that a little bit further along. And what was the US part of the gang mess that Central America has now. And if you're lucky, then you get a ride. However, if you get lucky, you get a ride. However, the danger with this is that sometimes people are so desperate because they're so tired that they put a lot in one car, and sometimes they fall. This became my group that I traveled with. I don't travel like journalist. I'm an artist, and I travel my way. And my way is to become part of the community, of the migrants, and of the people I travel. I eat what they eat, I sleep where they sleep, and I travel the way they travel. And this was my group. And the way I join a group is basically is by feeling. And my feeling was towards Conchita. the woman in the middle with the velvet jacket. She reminded me of the woman that raised me, who had been a migrant in El Paso and had been deported to Juarez and then got a job in my house. So I felt this connection intuitively to Conchita, of the woman that raised me, which name is Paula. And then from there, the group started. It was Conchita and I first, then Eva joined, then Alex, Darin, Alejandro, and continued. Eva left, people leave for different reasons. In Eva's case, her ex-husband took her 9-year-old son when she was 7 months pregnant, and he took him to the United States. So her goal was to join the Caravan and get to the United States so she could recover her son. So there are many factors why people leave, and this was Eva's. Eva was accepted through the border of El Ceibo, where the Mexican government said that they were gonna let the migrants in, and then asked for her deportation because the conditions were absolutely horrendous in the detention center. This is Luis. Luis also became part of our group. He is an unaccompanied minor. I fell in love with this boy. Really, really a good boy. Good boy. And he is now in an orphanage in Mexico. Unfortunately, he's 14. He grew up in the streets of Honduras. His parents abandoned him. And if you wanna adopt a child that is not from that country, it is extremely complicated. So if I wanted to adopt a child from Mexico, it's easy. But I can't adopt so easily an Honduran child that is in Mexican custody. So it gets complicated for an adoption process. But I talk to him weekly, and he's just a marvelous person. Finally, we arrived to El Ceibo and to the border. And one of the things that surprises me a lot is the faith of the migrants and the asylum seekers, because they're two different things. A migrant is a person that leaves for economical reasons and by law has no rights in the border. An asylum seeker leaves for persecution reasons. They can no longer be safe in their country, and they have some rights in the border. So it's a matter of what rights they have and how you address those two groups. But no, nevertheless, the first thing they do is they always pray, and they pray for Donald Trump. Even though he has changed the law quite a bit to not allow Central American migrants into the United States. Now we have the third country agreement. We have just remain in Mexico policy, but still they pray for him. And then they follow by the Our Father. And here we are in El Ceibo, close to the gates, waiting to see if the Mexican government would do what they had done for previous caravans and allow safe passage. That was not the case anymore. And people are desperate. So here you see them kneeling towards the authorities, asking to be allowed in, and that wasn't the case for it either. So we went to the shelter, and it's la Casa del Migrante del Ceibo, migrant shelter of El Ceibo. But there were a lot of us. There were like almost 800 of us. I don't know, I don't count how many people, but what I see is close to 800. So there were 4 bunk beds for the kids, and then we all slept in the floor and outside, and bed next to each other, like as you see here, it's like face to face. We must take a shower, and that is because you don't want to smell, because you don't want to be offensive to the others. So when the first opportunity to, in a shelter or what have you, to take a shower, people will encourage it. I didn't want to take one in the shelter, to be honest, because it was with a bucket and I didn't want to, and I was tired. They encourage it. They'll even offer the towel, something. They encourage it. So here is Darwin. Alejandra was giving him a bath. Here, somebody's brushing their teeth. You carry, when you leave, what you can. You can't travel with a lot of luggage because it's unpractical, because you're walking such long distances. And also the heat in Honduras, Guatemala, Mexico is very hot. So it's just unpractical. So you wash. And here, sorry. Ashley, I met her washing, and she was helping me and telling me like, no, don't use so much soap, do this, do that. And within our conversation, we started getting friendly, and she told me how scared she was of being in Honduras as a trans woman, because it's very dangerous. And she has had many threats to her life. As a member of this community, I advocate for the LGBTQ community always, in each one of my projects. And Ashley is not the exception. Here is the border of Guatemala and Mexico. And not only do you have the Mexican guards not allowing passage, but you also have the Guatemalan ones, the Guatemalan guards being very vigilant of the migrants. So everybody has an eye on the migrants, and it's not that easy for them to cross, even if they want to illegally, in the border of El Ceibo. And as you see here, they have guns all over the place. Ariane Elizabeth is 5 months old, and she is the youngest member of the Caravan. And her family is escaping gang violence in Honduras. Now, under Jeff Sessions, that no longer applies as grounds for asylum. So many families join the caravans, sell whatever they can to try to take a little bit of money, without realizing when they get to the border, the law has changed. Here is Chelita and her mother waiting, because the director of Foreign Affairs of Mexico showed up in El Ceibo and said, I'm gonna let you guys in groups of 10, organized. So they allowed women and children first. This was the gate, and here were the people desperate to cross. And then he said, I'm gonna let you in groups of 10, come in, and we're gonna give you asylum. So here we have the people all excited. This is the Guatemalan side, that they're finally gonna get to leave the horrors they're escaping. Here's Chelita again with her mom. Chelita had fainted at this point because there were so many people and they're so desperate, so much heat. Here's Amaya, the representative. This went up to the nighttime, and then they all got deported. So they went to Mexico, they are allowed, and what was that? And it was a lot in the Mexican media. It was a trick of the government to tear down the caravan. If they allow them in, they put them in buses, they put them in detention centers, then they can deport them back easily. So that was basically the trick. Out of when I keep in contact with the people I travel, that's a very important part of what I do, to keep those contacts. And it can be either WhatsApp, it can be Facebook Messenger, it can be different ways. So out of all the people that were allowed into El Ceibo, only 3 were left. So I went to the other border where the other group left. And this is Tecunuman by the Rio Suchiate. This is the other part. This is by the Chiapas border, if you see a map, and the other, El Ceibo, is by the Tabasco border. And here's Darwin, and he is leaving for economical reasons because he just can't get a job. And when he does, he earns very little money. And a lot of people leave that reason because sometimes the wages in Honduras are very, very low, or there are no jobs. Here is Elan, and Elan is the heat, just to give you an idea of how hot it gets. It's a tropical climate, and people the migrant shelter was packed to capacity, so we had to camp in the floor by the river. 2 days prior, the migrants had tried to cross into Mexico, and they were unsuccessful because the newly established Guardia Nacional had stopped them. And it became a fight between the migrants and the Guardia Nacional. The Guardia Nacional is like the army, like to give you an example. It's composed of the army and the federal police. And the migrants were throwing rocks at the Guardia Nacional. The Guardia Nacional was tear gassing the migrants. So this is an example of where we slept in Tecunuman. And as I said, like if you need, many families live with $7. There are 3. And as you travel in a caravan as a community, what you do is you don't buy food for yourself. It's not an individual thing no more. If you buy something, you buy a pack of tortillas, you put it there. Somebody buys a pack of cheese, they put it there. Somebody buys little glass, they put it there. So it's more of a community thing. Everybody helps each other. Here is on our way to crossing the Rio Suchiate by the Mexico-Guatemala border. Jose and his father, they had tried to cross 2 days before, and they had been unsuccessful, but they were not caught by the guards to be deported. They were able to escape. So here they're trying again. And here we are crossing the river. The river has 2 legs. It's a big part and a little part. And the water is depends on the current, but when we crossed that day, it was to my waist, and I'm 5'1". Here is Joel. Joel has 1 leg and walked almost 500 kilometers from Honduras all the way to Mexico, trying to get to the United States, in his quest to get to the United States. Here is the second leg of the Suchiate River. Here is my friend Banda. who was in charge of selling cigarettes to the caravan. So you become friends by staying in this community, being in this family, because basically they adopt you into a family. You become friends. Like I used to smoke, Banda became my friend. So we all become a sense of community. And then here, they make the flags themselves. So if you see here on the left side, it has like a little sign and it doesn't have the little stars. It's because they're all self-made flags, okay? It's not like they go to Hobby Lobby and just buy it. They make them. And here they're extremely happy that they finally crossed into the Mexican territory because it had been hard. And here's a glimpse from a bridge that I took of the caravan, of approximately how many people that we were. And here's La Marina. And La Marina is part of the National Guard of Mexico. And as we walked for like 7 miles after crossing the Rio Suchiate, and I would see trucks full of different members of the Guardia Nacional. And I would also see white buses, but we kept walking. And I was saying, oh, something's up here. I don't like it because I would see a lot of them. And lo and behold, when we stopped to take a break, they were waiting for us. And you would see the bus in the back. And when you see the hands up, the migrants were saying, queremos paz, queremos paz. And there was no peace. There was no peace. And there was no respect in how you deport people. I guess there's no pretty way of doing it, but there's definitely ugly ways, and this was ugly. I saw kids, which I'll show you the next picture, that had been tear gassed. People pleading to just remain in Mexico as an asylee, all sorts of things. People in the ground. It was not good. They were pushing them and pushing them and pushing them and forcing them to buses. And they ended up being deported. And there was not one thing I could do to help them. Doesn't matter how much I screamed, doesn't matter, I took pic, nothing. And it's a shame because Mexico is not that wasn't the policy of Mexico. That wasn't the policy for decades of Mexico until Trump came. And these people are escaping violence, a lot of gang violence that had to do with the civil wars in Central America that Ronald Reagan helped fund. And then these people in the civil wars, Ronald Reagan founded the elitist regime in Central America, civil wars. And what happens is all these poor people leave. They end up in places like Los Angeles. Their kids are not welcome. There's a lot of gangs, and they start forming their own. So they form Mara Salvatrucha was the result of immigrants coming from Central America during the Reagan years. And then not only that, they form Barrio 18 and Mara Salvatrucha in Los Angeles, but then in 1996, during the Immigration Reform Act and Immigrant Responsibility Act, they start deporting them back to Central America. So in Central America, the gang problem wasn't that big until you had all these people from Los Angeles that were already established criminals being deported. they could have found another solution, but they made a mess in Central America. And now we have this mess. A lot has to do with the United States, but Trump has made it sure the Central Americans can't get asylum in the US. It's just impossible, because if you stop, they have the first country agreement. So it's very similar to what they do in Europe. You can't country shop. If you stop in London, you can go in Germany and ask for asylum. They wanted to do the same thing, only that the only difference, little difference, is that Guatemala is not safe. El Salvador is not safe. So it's not a safe country agreement. These countries are still dangerous. So we have that to not let Central Americans come. And then we have the remaining Mexico policy to not let Central Americans come. So it's just this block, but no responsibility for what the country has done. So it's a very difficult situation. And this is my last picture that I'm showing you. I can go back. And the problem is not going to stop until the policies change. You're still going to find people trying to migrate into the United States. In the border, I'm from Juarez. People worry about the wall. They have tunnels. They have tunnels where they cross drugs and they cross migrants. And I know I'm being taped. I know they have tunnels. So why are we doing the wall? It's stupid, unless it's gonna go under. So the problem is not gonna happen until they change policy. And my work is basically just to inform what's going on. And as a protest of what's going on. That's it. Any questions?
There are some questions, Ada. Thank you. Your images are incredible. And I'm really grateful to see faces and to see and to hear stories and names and to go with those faces. And I feel like you've really humanized the people that you've traveled with. There are a few questions I'm going to start, and we'll ask these, but I think there's lots of questions and lots to talk about, if that's okay. Were you traveling by yourself with this caravan?
Yes, I don't travel with other people, never.
Okay. Manolo asks, I'm confused. How can you claim to be part of them if you are not entering Mexico as a refugee? So yeah, that's Manolo's question. And I don't know if Manolo, if you want to unmute yourself and you guys can have a conversation.
I entered Mexico as a refugee. I entered through the Rio Suchiate. I don't know if that answers your question, but I traveled as a refugee. I didn't enter through the bridge. I entered with the migrants illegally.
Yeah, but still, aren't you a Mexican citizen?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I have American citizenship. I was born in El Paso, Texas.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, thank you. I love your images, by the way. I especially like the images with large crowds. It's I have never seen it, and it's that very complicated situation where it's a very ugly story, but the images are incredibly beautiful.
Thank you.
Another one, Ara, incredible. Increíble. How long was your trip and did you feel endangered at points? Gracias, Rafi de MW El Futuro.
I arrived to San Pedro Sula on the 14th, and I left from Tapachula on the 27th.
There's lots of amazing comments. I'm curious about the deportation of the Honduras back. Do the Mexican authorities, they hold them in detention centers?
Correct.
And then they put them on the bus. Do they drop them at the border? They must just put them on the other side, and then they must find their way home again? Is that how it works?
They drop them in Honduras.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's not like they drop them in their house.
Right.
They take them to Honduras. The majority of the time to San Pedro Sula.
Laura writes, very powerful work. Did you have any issues with the military or the caravan with taking photos? Also, did you need to obtain any photo releases? Thank you.
I always ask permission. So if you see a lot of my pictures, the guy's looking at me. But I always ask permission. So that's my release. He tells me yes, I take. They say no, then it's no. Because they might have very strong reasons why not.
Joan writes, you are remarkable, as is your work. That's a compliment. Annalisa, wow, so amazing. I wonder how you handle the emotional side of this experience.
It still hurts. It still hurts. I have also video of what happened that day. I don't show it because I'm using so much foul language that the only way I could use it would be if I put it on mute and just let the video speak, because I'm so angry at the dehumanization of people. They're human beings. And they kept saying, we're not dogs, we're human beings.
If anybody else wants to unmute themselves, I'd be happy to not just be the only voice here. John Mason writes, fantastic work, powerful, compassionate, humane. Kevin says the images are very compelling. Sergio, did you have any breaking points while through your journey?
What does breaking like?
Sergio, do you want to qualify that?
Yeah, basically, like, through your journey, were there any points that you came to, like, where you were like thinking to yourself, like, I can't do this anymore, or this is getting too dangerous?
No, what I think emotional breaking point for me was Luis. That the fact that I was very interested in adoption for that boy, and to see that legally that was not possible, and it's still not possible. That's breaking because I know I could give him a good life, better than the orphanage, but the law is not in my favor. So I don't want him to turn bad. He's 14 and he's good, but I don't know what can happen to him that he can turn bad. And I didn't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen. That scares me. Because it's a little boy. So he can easily, something bad happens, shift to the other side. Those are the breaking points for me. That I meet people, I fall in love with them, they become my community, I embrace them, and then I'm left and I can't do anything.
Questions are coming in pretty quickly, Ada. Thank you so much. Was there any refugee on refugee crime within the caravan?
No, not that I see.
John asks, please say more about the migrants' religious faith. Is it Catholic or evangelical or indigenous or a mix of all?
Evangelical.
Rivka asks, do you feel protected by your US passport?
No, because actually I was born in the US. I lived all my life in Juarez. I have this accent. Spanish is my first language. So yeah, I have the paper, but I'm brown. I speak Spanish. I'm not like, it's not like I'm this tall blonde that is, everybody's gonna be like, oh, she's American. It's not like that. So it's no.
What effect is your photography having on the situation?
What?
What effect is your photography having on this situation?
Honestly, I hope it puts like a little like finger on the Mexican government that what they're doing is not right for human rights. And the more people that do it, the more that you know, like not me. It has to be a combination of like a lot of people like pointing out this is not good. This is not the principles of Mexico. They had allowed safe passage for migrants for decades. This is just Donald Trump's little thing.
It's his deal with the Mexican government, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you share your screen and we can maybe see some more faces in the room, yeah?
Yeah.
Because there's lots of people that have questions. David asks, how do you research the trip and make contact? Hang on, I want to make sure I get this. And make initial contact with the caravan.
Okay, let me make this. Okay, how do I research the trip?
Yeah, and make initial contacts.
Well, I buy a one way ticket always. So when I did La Bestia, one way, the other caravan, because I don't know how long it's gonna take. I don't plan. You can't plan it. You're like in limbo. You don't know what's gonna happen. So I had somebody, an angel that I have to take care of my daughter. And she's like, okay, go, don't worry. So you don't know. I buy a one-way ticket. In how I approach that caravan is just with vibes. It's like with Conchita was the first person I approached because she reminded me of Paula. And it's just that sixth sense, I guess.
Yeah. John asks, are you planning a book?
I can't say. I don't know yet.
Ivan says, my parents are from Zacatecas, Mexico, and I have a family that lives there. I hope to talk to them about this. I'm more aware of this issue now, thanks to you. Is there any other organizations or places that people can do additional research that we could share with the group and learn more about this issue, the issues facing immigrants?
Yeah, there's I mean, it depends what type of research. If you want to research this particular caravan, there's a lot of articles, especially as I said, in the Mexican media, because it happened in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
But if you put Caravana Migrante 2020, you will find a lot of articles, and if they're in Spanish, you can probably Google translate them into English.
Mm-hmm. Are there any non-governmental organizations working with the immigrants on the Mexico side?
Human Rights was there doing nothing.
Michelle just put in a link, helps women and children that recently crossed the border.
Yeah, Sueños Sin Fronteras run by Laura Molinar, and I don't remember where on the border they're based, but one thing that's really cool about them versus other nonprofits that are doing similar work on the border is that they help women with abortions when they've been raped along the way, because they're not associated with the church or anything. Where I know a lot of churches do a lot of great things, but they will not let a mom not get away with having a baby. So love them. It's women-ran organizations, really great.
I'll write that link right. What is it called again?
Sueños Sin Fronteras, Texas.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and that happens a lot with the transit. So many women, what they do is they take birth control pills when they know they're gonna deport.
Ron, did you run into other photographers working? If so, do you see a possibility of collaboration?
I didn't see any. And I don't like, I like my own style. I don't like people telling me what to do. Would I, like, if somebody wanted to show with me, like, I would show, but I don't know, like, what the extent of the collaboration would be and for what.
Manolo says, are there ways you noticed women, cis and trans, used to protect themselves in the journey? That's one way. How about physical safety? The one is contraception. So is there a way for women to protect one another or protect themselves?
That's why they go in caravans. Because when you go in La Bestia, and I've documented La Bestia, it is very difficult. I was almost raped by a federal cop in Mexico. So it was, and I had a camera and a pass. Like, imagine a woman that is there illegally, and she's pretty and she's young, and they think they can get away with it. I met a woman the age of my daughter, of Bella, 17 years old, who had been raped. Not by a federal cop, by somebody else. And the brother couldn't defend her because he had only one arm. So you see these stories, and they know they're not gonna get justice. That's what drives me crazy.
Did the old woman that is it Consuela? Did she make
Conchita.
it? Cochica, did she make it?
They deported her because she was too sick.
They sent her back, Honduras. And you're still in touch with her?
No, not with her, but with the other people of the group.
Has things quieted down? I mean, now that there's such an impasse at the Mexican border in Guatemala, have people stopped trying?
You have also the factor of COVID now. So when I did this, it was in January, and COVID hadn't hit the way it is now. So right now you have the factor of COVID also stopping a lot of people wanting to cross. But those of friends of mine that were deported, they want to come. Their goal is the United States. And as I said in the last picture, it's not going to stop until there's some sort of policy.
And it seems that the climate is continuing to exacerbate the need for people to leave because the things are getting so hot and dry. Farmers are losing a lot more of their crops because of global warming in Central America, and it's going to continue to get worse.
Yeah, you have different factors. You have economical, you have factors from the violence, climate change, and then limited aid.
Yeah. And the story about the gangs that came from Los Angeles and then were deported and restarted and built these horrific and terrorizing gangs in Central America. Do you know the work of Donna de Cesare?
No.
I'm going to put her name in the chat. Donna was working with the gang members in Los Angeles, but then went back. But her work is very long-term with gang members, both in Los Angeles, then also in Central American countries, in Nicaragua and Honduras. But she would be a good person to connect with. She's at the University of Texas.
Okay.
And I can hook you up with more with her. I know you got the grant from me and Eve, but how are you able to support your work?
Well, as I said, I don't need much to travel. So for instance, just to give you an example, a flight from a one-way flight from Philadelphia to San Pedro Sula was 600.
Mhm.
So it's not, and then like I'll take like something just in case of an emergency and whatever to come back.
Mhm.
But it's not, if I was staying at hotels and stuff like that, paying for like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, for me, like, is different. The way I utilize my money is I'll collaborate to whatever the meal of I'm having with my groupies. So I'll bring the tortillas, I'll bring the cheese, you know,
Mhm.
but I won't buy everything because that's not right. I mean, I'll put as much as I can.
Mhm. Mhm. Does anybody else have questions that they would like to ask Ada?
I went too fast, I think.
No, you were great. The photographs are so powerful.
I don't have a question, but I do have a remark. I think it really is worth emphasizing that I think Ada's work is a very powerful indictment of Lopes Obrador. You know, I think that it's very easy to blame Trump and like, you know, the nativism, American nativism right now for what's happening at the border in Guatemala. But that border has been a problem for a very long, I mean, it's been extremely violent for a very long time. And really what Lopes Obrador, I mean, if he didn't want to, like, if he wants to save tariffs, right? He's clearly, I mean, his alliances are extremely clear. And I think what your work does is it helps reveal that his alliances are not with the Mexican people. His alliances are with Mexican industry, which he also did with the COVID crisis in Mexico, which he totally ignored, right? He was completely irresponsible as far as, I mean, he's he's no better than the guy in Brazil, forget his name right now. You know, so I think it's something that really needs to be said, that, you know, yeah, Americans and gringos do all sorts of horrible things. But what's happening in Latin America and Latin Americans are doing to Latin Americans to defend the interest of industry is pretty horrendous. You know, that there is no human rights to speak of because money talks and everything else walks. Because that's what Lopes Obrador is doing. He's protecting Mexican industrialists. You know, because if he really cared about the people from Honduras, he'd say, well, rich people, sorry, you're going to have to pay, you're going to lose some money. And they're not losing any money. So thank you so much for bringing this, you know, it's a complaint against Mexico.
And it's a shame, right? Because he came into office saying he was a socialist and he was for the people, and that's why he was elected. And that has not been true. So it is una vergüenza.
Cierto.
Mm.
I have a quick comment, turning on a light because it's so dark in here and I look scary. But recently with the uprisings caused by the murder of George Floyd, I was talking to some friends in Oaxaca and asking them, you know, if things feel as wild down there because of COVID-19. And I know Guadalajara was doing some also protests for some police brutality that was going on. One of my friends was like, nope, this is just normal protests. We protest all the time, you know, but nothing ever changes. And then another friend ended up mostly just becoming angry because he's like, you know, like they're protesting in the US and things are changing and we're protesting here and nothing's changing. And he's like kind of building up all this anger, but has like no way to let it go. So it really was a time for me to realize like how how special the United States is in this way, as much as there's so many things to complain about, that we are a country compared to others where our voices are heard to some degree.
This is the best country in the world. The problem is the president we have.
Yeah.
That's why everybody wants to come here, because it's really cool.
And that's why we all have to get everybody we know to get out and vote.
Thank you, Joan.
So someone did ask another question. What is your, and I liked it, it's what's next for you? I'm just stealing it because I was curious also. What is next? What's next?
I leave probably next week. And I'm right now figuring out what avenue I'm gonna go. I have two things in my head, and I need to decide which one makes the most sense right now. As far as, but I start something next week.
I have one other question also, because in the very beginning, you described yourself not as a documentary photographer, which having looked at your work, I'm curious as to how you came to that description of yourself, a non-documentary, when your work is magnificent, but the appearance is that it's documentary because it is what is going on without.
Well, I didn't go to photography school. What I have learned in continuing ed and on my own. So that's one. So I think that to be documented, you have to go to school, you have to, like all that. And then the other one is I had dyslexia. So the documentary photography does a lot with excellent writing. My writing it's okay, but I have dyslexia. So that's why I rather just say I'm a nurse.
I appreciate everything you're saying, but I do think that you are an artist. Your work is artistic. Personally, I think that it documents, and you don't need words for it, actually. So, and that for me is how I would view the photographs, because there are no words. So thank you.
I mean, I think your work is documentary work, and it's beautiful documentary work. And Dorothea Lange never went to photography school either. So I don't quite, I don't think an MFA makes anyone an excellent documentary photographer. I think what makes an excellent documentary photographer is this ability to go sit by Conchita, like I have no idea, I can't, I stopped taking photographs of people because they want to attack me. But you're able to establish that connection that I myself find very difficult. But one question that I try to imagine you in the field. You did say you're 5'1", right? So and as a woman, I think in certain places being a woman facilitates the work because you're not perceived as a threat, right? Where if you were a guy and you were like 6'5", that might provoke a little bit of anger against the lens, right? But what kind of equipment do you use? How many batteries do you take? How heavy? Do you have a tripod? Do you I'm curious.
I took the tripod to La Bestia, which was a mistake because I ended up leaving it in the next town. And then I took I made the same mistake and I took it to the second Caravan, to the one in 2018. There I am carrying my stupid tripod. So for this one, I decided I'm just gonna put it at 250, no tripod, and just play with the light. Because I can't carry all this stuff.
Where do you recharge your batteries? Are you doing digital or film or?
No, I do digital, and what I do is when we stay in the shelters, when we stay in stuff like that, I got the wand. You know that wand where you have a lot of plugs?
Right.
So instead of like trying to fight over with the people for them to charge the phone, I said, why don't we use my wand and we all charge our stuff? Because there's only 2 plugs usually in a shelter or something like that, or very few. So with the wand, everybody's happy. So that's how I charge. So I'm always carrying the wand. That's part of the deal, right? And then I have a lot of batteries, and I have them I'm like a grandma. I have like my fanny pack, but a big one. So I have a lot of batteries in there and memory cards in the fanny pack. And then I have 2 cameras. I have the Leica Q, which is 28 millimeters. And then I have my Nikon, the 810, and I have different lenses for that.
So you carry a few lenses, 2 cameras, and a bunch of batteries.
Mm-hmm.
And a tripod that you always leave in the next town.
Yeah.
Were you ever afraid that the officials were going to take your camera from you?
No, it's my property. I mean, if they take it, what can I do? What would be, if I saw myself in that position, I would probably try to put the memory card in my shoe or something like that. That's what matters, the memory card. The equipment, it can be replaced, but the memory card with all, that's what's important.
The memory, yeah.
So this could go on. This has been amazing. Ada, you are incredibly inspiring, and we're so grateful that you could share your work. You're getting some applause and lots of love in the comments.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Where can I see your work on La Bestia?
In my website.
On your website. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you. Thank you. It was beautiful work. Great presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me.
Wonderful. You don't just your work alone is.
I mean, I think the other thing that I like to say, it proves that you can do documentary work without fixers, which I have always found rather problematic in documentary work. A fixer, when people have greater budgets, you have someone ahead of time, and I've always found that the fixer, it's a source of noise in the work, because you're not really quite organically developing a connection to the community that you're documenting. That connection is already built for you by the time you get there. So there's a level of artificial something or another that the fixer, to me, is a problem in documentary work. It's also like, whose work is it, the fixer or your work, and few people even acknowledge the contributions of the fixers, which are often like reporters from those local places. So thank you for your work. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ada.
I noticed when I travel with less money, I end up having more adventures and more fun. So for somebody that wants to do a project out there, even if they don't have the budget, do it with a little bit, and you'll be surprised that something really cool can come.
Ada is the expert on this. Trust her. Y'all come back next week when Makita Best is going to give a lecture. She is the current curator of the Harvard's Museum of Art, curative photography. And she's going to be talking about her current book project on the archives, race and history in San Francisco. And tomorrow, Finding Focus, our second installment of a webinar series about finding focus in times of trauma. That's also on our website, and it starts at noon, and it's going to be participatory, so you all are welcome to join us. Thank you, Ada. Everybody, have a good night. See you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was wonderful.
Bye.
Thank you.